Hello, brothers. Happy Sunday again.
Happy Sunday.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going good.
Good to be back.
Feel good. I'm just
It is good to be back.
Yeah.
enjoying this last little bit of relatively not cold weather until the next few days when it's going to be nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, like tonight is minus 29 with the wind chill or something.
What?
Yeah.
Are you ice fishing?
I am ice fishing
Tomorrow?
not tomorrow, Tuesday. Yeah, I'm ice fishing on Tuesday.
And do you have a
Sounds
hut?
great.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great
Sign me up for
It is
that.
good. That's good.
Now, where are you ice fishing?
Rondo Bay.
So do you have sleds to get out there?
Yeah, we have little sleds to pull all the gear out. Like we have to walk across the ice. It'll be very cold for that.
Oh, when I said sled, I meant like a snowmobile.
Oh, no, we're walking.
You're walking.
Walking
and how
around,
far
yes.
out?
Not that far. I don't know. It might be it could be 10-minute walk.
I know,
Matt,
but not
maybe.
that far in minus 20
yeah.
degree
I know, but
wind.
listen, I'm going to be in full gear, thermals. I've got big snow pants. I'll be warm. It might be a little bit cool walking out, but then we get into a thermal hut, and you got heat, and you've got, it is thermal. You close the door, and it'll be surprisingly warm in there. You'd be surprised.
You're going to be there all day?
Probably.
You pack a lunch?
Yes, lunch, and I bring a huge thing of like hot chocolate. Hypothetically, maybe some Baileys in it. Hypothetically,
Well, what's the lunch? Chili? Something hot?
yeah, something hot. Yeah,
you can't drink on the ice?
No, I don't know why I'm saying hypothetically.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, you can. You're
yeah,
not
there's no
upload.
law against drinking on the ice. It's the idea of drinking on the ice all day and then getting in your vehicle that it would be the issue.
Yeah.
But I'm not driving, so
Yeah, there's something cozy about that.
there
Some
is
nice warm
Yeah, you-
chili, hanging out with the
couple
guys.
guys. Yeah, 3 of us hanging out, telling jokes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, what's our topic today, guys?
We are talking about masculine. Well, sorry, was it masculine energy?
Yeah.
We were just we were just obviously all just in a chat with somebody else about this. Oh, toxic masculinity came up, and which I don't particularly like the word, but that's what came up. And then we got thinking about masculine energy, and we started
And what it is.
riffing on that a little bit. And I think that's what I'd like to explore a bit today.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't like the word toxic masculinity either
Yeah.
because I think it implies that all men are
Well, it
toxic.
feels like a buzzword to me.
yeah, and it's
But there
this-
is toxic masculinity.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there is, how do you define it?
I guess for me, if I had to define toxic masculinity, it would be that typical, like,
Jock.
yeah, locker room jock,
Bravado.
bravado, egocentric,
Yeah. Not a fan.
like all just like puffing chest, smashing into as you're walking, I don't know. Like, I think that to me would be toxic masculinity.
I would agree. I think about being the skinny guy in high school that everybody's like pushing into the locker, all the jocks that are pushing in, and
But you
making
turned out
fun of-
fine.
Exactly, I did. Yeah.
You're masculine enough, Chad.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wade.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'm confident in my own masculinity. Yeah.
Well, I think I did pull up a definition just because I was curious.
I am curious actually what that is.
So let's see here. So toxic
Toxic.
masculinity.
Yeah, you didn't get beat up at all.
Toxic masculinity is a term used to describe the harmful aspects of exaggerated masculine traits. So like you were saying, Spence. So it's characterized by dominance, meaning men are expected to be aggressive, forceful, and in control. Anti-femininity, men are expected to reject feminine traits such as vulnerability, emotion, and domesticity. And sexual entitlement, men are expected to be sexually entitled.
Wow.
Last one is power. Men are expected to have the money, the power, status, and influence.
I think that those reasons are exactly why I don't like that term, because I don't agree with pretty much most of what you just said.
Yeah, toxic masculinity can have a negative impact on men, women, and society as a whole. Now, compare that to masculine energy.
Okay.
That's defined as, it's also known as yang, so yin and yang. Masculine energy is all about doing. This spiritual energy is external, stable, predictable, logical, and focused. To tap into your masculine energy, you must take risks, set goals, and stand up for yourself. So I like that.
Yes, I
That
agree.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Those are good things.
Yeah, I just can't be the extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I think that's what it comes down to. I think when you say the definition of masculine energy, to me that sounds like what I would think most women would want in their male partner. To that you would be a masculine. You can still be in touch with your feminine side, but you would be a masculine energy in general of how you are in the world.
Yeah, if that's what they, I mean, if they're attracted to men, then yeah, I think that's.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, if you
for sure.
if you had a male partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says the usual masculine characteristics are decisiveness, ownership of a topic, willpower, and strong self-respect. To me, those are all good.
Yeah. I'd even say maybe
characteristics.
safety, because I think there's like a
Yeah.
feeling of safety or strength.
Like you're telling like if you're with if you're a woman with a male partner that has masculine energy, is that what you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like I think most of our wives would say, we provide a secure, safe,
Yeah. But there seems to be a segment of women that also like the toxic masculinity traits too, though. There are some women who are attracted to that bravado.
yeah.
Why is that?
They
Like
say
what?
that it was like the bad boy.
Yeah.
The bad boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get why women like a bad boy. I really don't. Like they treat them like crap. They're generally not there for them most of the time.
Oh, I get it.
Why?
Well, it's no different. It's no.
The
well,
submissive.
yeah, because let me say this. I don't think women choose to marry a bad boy, but women like to date a bad boy. Just like when we were younger, we would see a woman that we were like, oh, she looks like she's
Knows what she's doing.
she's been around or she's right. And
Yeah.
that's exciting, but you're like, yeah, I'd never marry her. Right. So
Right.
it's just, I think there's that aspect of it that you want. You
That
want that
primal-
excitement, the primal, you want that
Yeah.
excitement, but you really don't want, that in the long run, it's not going to last.
Right.
But for someone to marry someone who's toxic, I'm not sure why they even want to do that.
There's plenty of that going on.
There is.
Unfortunately.
There
I
is.
feel bad for women actually that feel that they have to settle for somebody like that, that think they get convinced that their worth is so low.
or so tied to what the male's perspective of their worth is.
Yeah. That's
Right.
right.
But I feel bad for men who feel they have to be toxic too.
What do you
to
think?
act that way? I don't like that trait.
Well,
Where's it come
hold
from?
on. I was just saying, do you think that they think that they have to act that way, or do you think that was instilled in them by maybe they had an abusive father, or something that
I
it just
think-
got passed down the line?
I think a bit of both. We talked about a bit about this. Let me get those
Holy
words
cow.
out. Wow. We
Is it
talked a
burnt
bit
toast?
Did you get a lot of head trauma in high school?
about Dr. Pinchak, I smell burnt toast. Yeah, we talked a bit about this last night. That where was I going with this? I totally
Exactly.
just lost my
Anyways,
train of
back
thought.
to the head trauma.
That was my dementia today. My goodness, what was I going to say?
Yeah.
There's a lot of psychology that young men struggle today because they're not really sure how they're supposed to act based on what they're hearing in media today, right? And there's a lot of talk about toxic masculinity. So it's like, well, I don't want to be that, but then is it okay to be masculine? Like, is that not okay?
100%
Because there's a
it is,
difference
yeah.
between masculine energy and toxic masculinity.
Yes.
But I think young men are struggling with, well, what is the difference? And is it not okay to be a man and have masculine traits and
I don't
act
know.
that way?
Do you think young men are actually
I think so.
struggling with
Absolutely.
what am I supposed to act like if I'm a man?
I think so, because
Really?
there's a lot of
There's a
push.
lot of negative connotations.
There is. If you're a single white male today, there's
Okay.
a lot of negative connotation around. You need to apologize for being that because you're toxic by the nature of the fact that you're male. So I think that's troubling some people. I don't feel that way because I'm comfortable in my skin and who I am, and we all are because we're in our 50s.
Right.
But I think it's probably hard. Like if you think back to when you were a teenager, that's hard enough as it is. And then you add in, well, how am I supposed to act? Like, is it okay to act this way, or is that not okay now?
Yeah, I find it interesting and I believe that that's what you're saying. I think because we were brought up with a father that was masculine but not toxic, I guess I've never really thought about the need of having to figure out if what I'm doing is appropriate as a man, because I just feel we were brought up right, I guess. Maybe that's why.
But we're also brought up in a whole different time that's not
Yes.
the existing culture today, which is, I don't want to call it woke culture, but
Well,
there might be
is.
some
Yeah,
aspect
yeah.
of that. But
So that's interesting. I don't know why, if you are a man and you're white, why there would be a connotation that you must be have some other issue.
Because you have privilege.
So if you're privileged, you are going to be toxic masculinity. Is that what you're saying?
No, but I think it's incumbent upon you there's a greater responsibility for you to be aware of the privilege that you have.
yeah. So one thing that stood out for me in the definition of toxic masculinity was that men are expected to reject feminine traits such as vulnerability, emotion, and domesticity. So I don't consider those
Toxic or
hold on.
masculine?
Yeah.
toxic.
Oh yeah, toxic. I would agree.
I don't.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, but I don't agree that those are feminine traits.
Yeah, I actually think there's absolutely nothing wrong with being, tapping into your, we'll call it your feminine side or whatever you want to call it, or
Yeah.
the ability to be empathetic or, whatever, any of those things. I don't think that's weakness at all. Actually, I think it's quite the opposite.
It's strength for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
However, and we talked about this the other night too, we did have a father who could demonstrate those things. I mean, when it comes to domesticity, Dad helped cook. He helped do lots of things in the house. So that was always a natural thing for us. And we all cook in our homes, which is kind of interesting. We all do a lot of that. But the vulnerability, the emotions, Dad will tell you he was not as emotional when he was when he was younger, when he was raising us, right? It was rare for him to say the words "I love you." We knew he did,
Right.
by his actions, but it was rare for him to say that. And he would also say, "Well, my dad didn't say it to me." So, but I think we were different with our kids. That we probably said that a bit more because we recognize the importance. And I know that Dad feels the importance now to do that.
Sure.
He's obviously evolved a lot.
Oh, he's
in
a
that.
sap now.
Yeah, he's evolved tons in that area.
Yeah. Now he's crying every time he looks at a Hallmark card.
Yeah. So I don't buy the notion that those traits are feminine traits. I think those are just healthy traits to be
Yes.
vulnerable and show emotion.
Oh, it's being in touch with your inner self, or whatever you want to call it. I don't
but
think
you
it's
also-
necessarily feminine, but it's just being comfortable with being okay to be vulnerable at a time when you should be vulnerable, or being empathetic, or caring, whatever you want to call it.
Well, it doesn't serve anyone well to not show those traits or to act like to think they have to be strong all the
Right.
time. And I can tell you that I'm pretty proud if I can stay strong, but I also know that's a bit of a weakness to always try to be that way, to not be vulnerable.
Yep.
Right.
And I think the truth is too that when you see somebody that is like that, we all can tell. Everybody around them knows it's a facade.
Right.
Like we all know that they're struggling or whatever, and like,
Yes.
okay, nice, face you're putting on, but just be honest. Come on,
Yeah, because they're over the top.
help me out.
Yeah.
right.
It's just always a surface kind of, they're
Yes.
always on. It's like, can you just be
Just be you.
yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, were you going to say something, Spence?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's also different though that like in the upbringing, because again, in the time when we were growing up, there was, very often there would be, discussions or, things said like, come on, I'll give you something to cry about, or stop crying like a girl, or
Well,
Right.
who's saying that? You saying in the house?
no, like just like whether you were in school or whatever,
I
it was
see.
like,
Yeah.
there was that
Well,
connotation.
like go ahead, go put on your skirt.
Right, but it was like it was a negative if you did show any emotion. So I think you learned at a very early age,
Right.
I can't show vulnerability.
Well, yeah. Think about some of the
And
sayings.
I think now it's different. I think now,
Yes.
it's trying to be more inclusive and
Yeah.
and realizing that that's not
It's not negative.
right.
But there were subtle things growing up that we didn't even see as being damaging, right? So the term "grow a pair," what does that mean, right?
Well,
We know what it means,
Yeah.
but it's basically saying unless you like grow a pair, like be a man, right? There's another
Yeah.
saying, be a man, man up, right? Those are all
True.
Those are all statements that you don't realize at the time what that's really
Yeah.
saying. You're not being a man, and what is a man?
yeah, you're internalizing those and then starting to second guess. If what
No,
you're
but there's a
doing is,
negative connotation.
there
Like,
is.
come on, you little bitch.
Yeah,
And it's like,
Yeah.
well, oh, you pussy.
Yeah.
yeah.
Right? And it's like it's all making you feel like you shouldn't
But
be.
honestly, the
He
guy
cried like a little girl.
Well,
Like,
yeah, the guys that
exactly.
are saying that though are exactly the
toxic
the
masculinity.
ones that I have zero patience for or room for in my life.
Yeah. So let me ask you guys this: would you, if someone said to you, "We're going to have a party this weekend,"
Yes.
and your choice is you can go to a party that's co-ed with 30 people of both genders or mixed genders,
Yep.
or you could go to a party with just men. What's your choice?
Well, I think the nature of what it is the party is, I think, has some impact. Like if you just said, let's go camping for a weekend, 20 guys going.
It's a sex party.
Well, I am definitely going co-ed. Yes.
No, I know what you mean. No, you go. You go ahead and say what you're going to say.
No, I was going to say there's times when you enjoy, and we've talked about this, before, Spence, that, there's certain, family, friends, if it was, Ryan and Andrew or whatever, there was a group of guys that, we all enjoy spending our time with, and we were going to go do whatever, go, it doesn't matter what it is.
A group of guys that we shared common
Sure.
interests with. Yeah.
Then that's enjoyable. I
Yeah.
think generally speaking, in a large group, I do prefer the co-ed or the mixed group, because I've always found I had a lot of good relationships with women, generally speaking.
Right.
And I just find it comfortable. They find me comfortable. I don't know why
Except for
that
that
is.
one incident in 1983, but
Yeah.
we won't
Yeah,
talk
but
about that.
Yeah,
That's
but-
still
Yeah,
sealed.
I'm still raw. Yeah, I think, to answer your question, I probably for the most part prefer co-ed over, like, just, I'm not one of those guys just like hanging with the boys, like going to the bar with the boys. Wasn't really my thing.
Right.
Like, well, how come it's never co-ed fishing? It's always like, oh, I got Ryan and Corey, and I never
no.
hear like Misty's coming.
I mean, I've
or-
listen, I've definitely fished with women, but generally speaking, of the people that I know in this world, most of the women aren't fishermen or fisher persons, whatever you want to call it. So that's the only reason. Using Jenny as an example.
Yeah.
Right. I took her out on the boat. What?
just you're just like, oh,
No, I took her out on the boat, and it was awesome. She was so excited to be catching fish. I would love to do more of that, but I just don't happen to know a lot of women that
I was just
are,
being-
are,
I was-
I know
I
you're
know,
just
smart.
being, yeah.
So I would
Pussy.
agree.
wow.
I would agree with you, Chad. If it's a bunch of guys who you've been lifelong friends with, you really get along. There's not the ego or the bravado. It's nice to hang out with those guys.
I would agree.
But I think overall, I would much prefer a co-ed
Sure.
thing to just an all guy thing. I've always been that way.
Yeah, but I think there's a time and a place. If
Yeah.
you are, hey, we're gonna have a bunch of guys, we're gonna go golfing and have a dinner and have some beers and just kind of joke
Yeah.
around, then I think there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think that's you're anti, women
No,
and
I agree.
co-ed.
No, I agree.
But I think there's certain events that are more lined up
Yes.
that just makes more sense, either because there's an interest level there that maybe women don't have, and the same way that women are like, hey, let's have a girls' weekend or an afternoon, get together. I think that's fine. I think it's healthy to have, commonalities like that. But I would agree. I think if you're going to have, the majority of gatherings, co-ed is so much better.
I would agree with you. I don't think it's anti-feminine to have the guys get together, and I don't think it's anti-masculine to have women get together. Lots of women. There's sometimes that I think, I wonder what that feels like to have that sisterhood. That must be kind of interesting, because a lot of women really seem to enjoy the company of other women in that sisterhood, and they probably feel the same way about us. What's it like to have that brotherhood of being with the guys? Right? You'll never know what that feels like.
Yeah. Well, they wouldn't like it because it's just, farting and burping and laughing.
Yeah, I mean,
and,
there's definitely times when you're just hanging out with the guys. Of course, you can be more yourself. You can tell those jokes that aren't appropriate in a mixed room or whatever. And because none of you inherently, I think guys are less offended by, off color, I think, in general.
Maybe. Yep.
Depending on, I mean, I definitely have had female friends that are, full on truckers and they can take it, But I think generally speaking, that environment is conducive to that sort of thing.
When you were raising your kids,
Yeah.
did you make it a priority to, like, were you aware that you want to show emotion more, or did it just kind of come naturally to you?
I think it was a natural thing. I've never questioned anything that either of them ever did, as far as, like, are they fitting within the norm of whatever that should be? And I've never said or done something with a thought in advance of, am I projecting a certain way? I just try to be a good human being, and whatever that is kind of what came out.
What about being emotional in front of your children?
Oh, I've definitely done that. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Was that hard for
I'm
you?
human.
Was it hard for you?
Like, do you try not to show them that, vulnerable side, and you always want to be like the calm, cool, and I've got it together?
No, I mean, listen, there's times when you are hiding your feelings, but I think it's to do with the situation at hand. So if you were scolding your parents and you were like,
Scolding your parents.
Oh, sorry, scolding your children.
Dad, Mom.
Yeah,
When was
Mom and
the
Dad,
last time
stop
you
it.
did that?
No, if you were scolding your kids and you were like over the top angry, I would, for example, hold some of that back in. So I just say, what you've done has really disappointed me.
Right.
Unfortunately, this is what's going to have to happen, as opposed to say, and going off and showing them my full emotion. So in a case like that, I'm certainly holding back.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes when I have been upset or angry at them about things, showing them my emotion helps convey the depth of how much what they did may have hurt me. And I think that's important for them to know from my perspective.
There was I can't remember the whole article, but I just read snippets the other day, but it was a psychologist saying that these 5 statements from childhood are very damaging and are borderline abusive. And one of them was, I'll give you something to cry about. That was a borderline abusive comment that can have lasting impacts on children growing up. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Did we ever hear that growing up?
I think we might have heard that growing up. But again, that's that. It's not okay to cry. Like, I'll give you something to cry about. You should not be crying about this little thing, right? Which is a toxic masculinity kind of statement to make.
Well, minimizing your feelings. It's like, you shouldn't be feeling that way.
You shouldn't be crying about that little thing.
Right.
Don't cry over spilled milk, right? Some of those kind of things. I when you asked Chad the question about being vulnerable, I have a sense as to why you're asking that, maybe. But I know that I personally try to be.
Well, hang on. What sense do you have that I'm asking?
Because I think you're probably like me in this regard. That
you think you and I are more sensitive than Chad?
No.
Oh.
I know that I at times hold my feelings in to be the strong person in front of my family when I probably shouldn't have to do that. When I should just be who I am. But there's times that I do try to be the strong person. Like if there's a death in the family.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to be the strong one for my family, even though I'm like, oh my God, I just wish someone would come to me and say, it's okay, you can let it go. But I need to be the strong one.
Right. Yeah. And just to be clear, when I said about letting out my emotion, doesn't mean there's not times when I feel like I have to be strong. I remember, when Missy's mom was in the hospital and she wasn't going to make it.
Yeah.
And I had to go pick up Ryan and just tell him to get home. He was at a friend's and we just wanted him to be home with us. And, I remember talking to him in the car and having to keep it together while I told him, and he started, crying, and I was like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Inside, I wanted to do the same, right?
Right. But so why didn't you?
Yeah, why didn't you?
It's an interesting question.
Well, I think because I knew that it was going to be, he was quite young, and I knew that it would be very hard on him, and that my strength at that moment was maybe going to help him. But it wasn't that I wasn't willing to be vulnerable. I just thought that was the best for him at that moment.
No, but
why not cry with him so he sees that it's okay to cry and show your emotion?
It's an interesting question because I have a feeling that if Missy had told Ryan, she would be crying with him.
Sure.
And Sue would cry with our kids with them. So I think as a man, we still have that sense of you need to be strong for them, for your son. You got to be strong for them. When really the right message is, I'm going to cry with you because we're both upset.
Right.
So I think that's interesting that we still do that.
It's funny because I certainly have cried. We've been emotional about deaths in the family, things like that have happened.
Yep.
Absolutely, they've seen that from me. I just saying at that particular moment, for whatever reason, that seemed like that was the right response. Do you find that you show Spence?
I show Spence.
Show Spence? No, Spence. Show the emotion with your kids, or I feel like you would be more closed off than we would be.
What?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
I do.
No.
I think you can be.
Oh, sure. Of course, I can be. If I'm trying to portray, strength, then I've got it all together. But no, I would say for the most part, I show all my emotions to my kids and to my family.
Are you going to cry right now? It looks like you're a little emotional right now.
Can you just hold me?
A little glassy eyed. I'm going to hold you.
But yeah.
Just cuddle for a few minutes.
No, but I think, I wouldn't say that my kids think that I'm not emotional. I think they say the opposite. I'm very emotional, and I can cry at movies and
that's not what I'm talking about. I know that you are, and you get you're like me. Your kids write a nice birthday card to you, and it's heartfelt words.
Gosh,
it gets me every time.
Yeah,
right. Or speeches at one of their weddings or something. That would. I know you haven't done that yet, but that certainly gets me. I know you're like that, but I just mean generally speaking, day to day, if you feel like you have to portray, you run a big company, you got a lot of responsibility. Do you feel like you have to maintain some of that at home?
No. I feel like I can be myself at home. Okay. There are some times that yes, I will hide my emotions if I don't want to, upset my kids or my wife. But
Yeah, I think the times that you hide your emotions isn't because you don't feel you should show them. I think it's because you just don't want to talk about it at the moment. I think that's
could be
what
too.
I see from you sometimes. I mean, I know now if I watch a tearjerker movie with my family, I'm like, I'm like
But
ugly crying on the
here's
couch.
a question. I have a question for you. And I guarantee I know the answer. But so you're watching a sad movie, right? And it's a tearjerker. Do you try to like hold back and not be like letting out what you
100%.
could?
Yeah,
if you're
because-
by yourself,
yeah.
like
Because I don't do the
Right.
but so you feel yourself holding it, and you know what's coming, but
Yes.
you're trying to like
you're swallowing
but like why though?
because we're men.
Yeah. I will admit.
No, but
that-
I think Tina does it too.
No,
I think
sorry.
she won't just the ball out crying. I'll look over and I can see her like, putting her thing like this, and I can tell she's getting emotional, but she won't. I
let it
know
out.
if I wasn't there, she'd probably be way more comfortable just to like let it out, and vice versa.
Yeah, I think you watch any kind of interview on TV when someone gets emotional, the first thing they say is sorry.
Yeah,
Right. And then they turn away and they wipe their tears, which is weird that we all do that. It's like, I'm sorry that I'm emotional. I shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Why are we apologizing for being
Right.
It's a natural human emotion, but we all do it.
So what's interesting is I am the same as you in those movies, or this silly Hallmark commercial, or whatever.
I don't want to
I'm
show
getting
it.
like feeling if it's something you can relate to. A good father lost his child, whatever it might be. I do that, and I do try to hold it back, but it's not because I'm afraid of being vulnerable. I just feel really stupid that I'm crying at a commercial. I think that's really what it is.
Well, I don't think any of us want to kind of lose complete control in front of anybody. So you just, for me, I don't want to ugly cry like that. But there have been movies, like there's the movie Coda, which I really liked. I think you guys watched it. I'm not sure if you liked it as much as I did, but that one scene, I just remember like, oh my God, I looked over at Allie and she's bawling and I'm bawling. And I was just like, I have no problem showing that emotion, but I certainly could feel myself not letting out
Trying
the
to
ugly
suppress
cry, trying to suppress it a bit.
Right.
Yeah.
So what did we figure out? What did we learn?
Well, I think I don't like the term, like I said, toxic masculinity, but I do think that men have to be more comfortable with being in touch with their feelings and not worrying so much about what somebody else is going to think. I think that would be a plus for the world in general if most people were just in tune with their feelings and didn't, and men and women, frankly. But I know we're talking masculinity today, but I think that learning to let go, learning to just be a human, I think it's a plus.
But I think that is happening actually, which I think I'm proud of. As I think that as the generations continue, they are getting more
In touch.
and it's okay. And you see, teenagers that, in my day, if someone was crying or having a moment, all the other guys would be laughing and making a joke. Where now, you see something happening and all the friends and the kids are going around surrounding and supporting and hugging. And like, it does seem like there is.
Yeah. So if that's true, which I think it is true, why is this term toxic masculinity become so rampant now that apparently a lot of men are just toxic? Like, why is that
but
the
I
case?
think in our day, there was a lot more toxic masculinity.
Yes.
And maybe as those men grew older, they still had those traits. And, maybe it's slowly being eroded out of,
But there's a lot of people that'll tell you that young men today are toxic. Like there seems to be this push that a lot of young men are toxic.
I don't want to use the woke term, but I think this is a mentality that, it gets spewed out there, and I don't think it's necessarily the case. I don't believe that men in general are more toxic now than they were before. I think it's probably like Spence
they're
said.
less.
I think
they're
you're
more
right.
aware.
Yeah, I think there's more awareness, and people are being, because there is so much sensitivity in the world right now, people are being conditioned to, you got to think about somebody else. Or if you see somebody else, lend a hand, or if somebody falls down, help them up, or open a door, all of those sorts of things. People are being taught to be more compassionate in a variety of topics because it is mainstream. I don't buy that everybody's more toxic as far as men go right now.
It's interesting. Like I think if I talked to my daughter and her friends, they would say that they've met a lot of toxic males if they go to the bars, that they have this sense of entitlement that you're, as a woman, you're talking to me, so you're showing interest, but now when you're saying no to me or you're denying me, that suddenly you're, and then they get mad and they get abusive because the woman is saying no, like they're setting boundaries. So I hope that's not the case.
Is it, well, hang on.
It could be the locale too. You're at a bar.
Is that
like,
toxic masculinity or is that just fear of rejection? You know.
Well, sense of entitlement is part of toxic masculinity.
Okay.
Yeah, entitlement to sexual reciprocation from a woman, right? I don't know. I think it is getting better. What I can't stand is I cannot stand the mentality if you bump into someone going into a store and they go, "What's where you going?" It's like, seriously, dude? Like, where you say sorry and like, "Yeah, you better be." You're like,
Yeah.
I said sorry.
I'll
Like,
give you something to be sorry about.
I said sorry. What do you want me to say?
I
Like,
know.
I bumped into you.
Yeah, but then that's a toxic.
Yeah, I can't stand that mentality.
Yeah, I would do everything possible to avoid anyone like that in my life. 100%. But why don't you wrap it up for us, Spence? What do you say?
Well, I say that I think there's always going to be a subset of toxic males. I just think, hopefully it gets eroded out of our society and culture because I don't believe there's a place for that. And I could be biased because I grew up with all daughters. I've got a female dog, so there's no toxic masculinity in my household. But yeah, I just think, it does exist. I know it exists probably a lot in the sports world. But yeah, I agree. I don't think there's a place for that. And I think hopefully over time, men can get in touch with their.
Yeah, I mean,
their
one thing
emotional
we
side.
didn't talk about was the opposite angle, which is, or the other side of the spectrum, which is is there toxic femininity too?
I'm sure there would have to be.
Because I think
right.
to sum it up, what Spence said early on in this conversation makes the most sense to me. There's masculine traits are not traits to be ashamed of. They're good traits. It's when there's too much of the same trait
Right.
that it becomes an issue. And I would say that's the same for women, right? If they're
Yeah, there's some women that are like anti-male
absolutely.
and anti-men, and all men are
that's
You hold
bastards. It's
You
just like,
hold the
well,
door
hang
for
on.
them, and it's like, why are you holding the door? I can look. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be a nice human.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sure it goes both ways for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I do hope that the world is slowly turning the other direction. If if you're somebody who is toxic, I hope you will
Stop watching that.
stop watching.
Yeah, stop doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, man.
All right, brothers.
All right.
See you next time.
On ProBROknow.